Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of the Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show, we'll revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Ike Eisenmann and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. I'm one of your hosts, Jonathan Rosen, along with the revered Ike Eisenmann. And first of all, I've been seeing, Ike and I were just talking about this. You know, we were just about our subscriber list is really growing, and we thank all of you for hitting that subscribe button and all the followers. You know, we're enjoying what we're doing, and really, first, before we do anything else, thank you.
Absolutely, thank you so much. Yeah, you're keeping us more than excited to be able to bring these shows to you. So we'll see how excited you are for today's show. Right. You never know.
Well, today we have a special thing. We decided to do something, a little every once in a while. We're going to do, take a look back at forgotten films. And you can see behind me. And before we started this, Ike demanded that he goes first. He said, "No, we're going to do this. No, no." So we're going to do The Hidden. So I'm going to be honest. I vaguely remember the film. I'd never seen it, but I vaguely remember when it came out. Of course, I'm tearing now, but I vaguely remembered it. So I went back, and you had mentioned it. So I went back. It is I think in 87 it was out. Came out.
Yeah, 1987. Yeah.
It's a very 80s movie. The whole
100%.
The whole look, everything right off when you watch it 5 minutes, and you could tell without even knowing when it was from. You could look at the movie and say when this came out. Not the year perhaps, but the decade. You knew what decade this came out.
Oh, definitely. I agree. I mean, it was obviously it was a contemporary film at the time, but boy, all the 80s wardrobe and design and even I don't know, I wouldn't say the music from it was
I would say the music. I would say the music.
Yeah, you
and
think
even
so?
The cinematography too. I mean, the 80s have a certain look in their movies. I for sure that you could definitely. I think the 70s too. After that, it's a little bit tougher for me to tell. But for 70s and 80s, I look at a movie and I know what decade they're from just without even looking at the years.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and I was trying to remember. I might have actually worked on it.
Did you?
I worked. Yeah, I think I might have. And if I didn't, I knew a lot of people who did because I just rewatched it. And I bought it on DVD back in the day when it came out because I was a big fan of it from day one.
Had you seen this in the theaters?
I'm trying to think. Did I see it in the theater? And I can't be 100% sure about that. But I know once I bought it on DVD, I watched it a lot because I just what I think I was drawn to about this movie because it didn't make a whole lot of money. It wasn't hugely popular at the time. So I felt like perhaps I had discovered it post its theatrical release and I'm sitting watching it and I'm basically a fan of B sci-fi movies, just B sci-fi movies in general. And I don't know if this was styled that way or intended to come across as a B sci-fi movie, but that
definitely had that
hit me.
Feel.
Yeah, it really hit me that way because it's a low budget film. You could tell, even though there's a lot of car crashes and car crashes are always expensive. The chase scenes, there's this chase scene that opens up the beginning of the film with a Ferrari after a bank heist and the bad guy who's running away from the police is smashing into cars. The cop cars are smashing into other cop cars, and they have a whole big wipeout at the end of the sequence. And I thought, God, the show's got this low budget texture grady feel to it, but my goodness, this sequence was definitely, they spent some money on that. But by and large, everything was done in such a cost-effective manner. And I thought the entire way in which the story was told was really geared towards a lower budget concept. and I thought it worked. It worked. I mean, you know, the effects were a little cheesy. You know, it was just, I always think of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the original one. Now that's a huge classic. I guess it's more of a horror film, but horror sci-fi. I think it applies to both of these.
Oh, many of those, yeah.
But you know, what I loved about the like B sci-fi and horror movies of the 50s was just how cheesy they were. They were over the top stories and trying to thread a human interest story in the middle of a monster movie was always just such a funny thing to me. And then the costumes and effects and the makeup were always much lower budget, and so everything really looked like your backyard puppet theater, you know, put on film. And this was really no different. The effect of the monster I thought was fascinating, really well done, but still had that cheeseball factor that made it feel like a 50s, you know, monster movie. And I just dug it. And then I loved where it went, and you know, and I've watched it more times than it probably deserves, but I'm a big fan.
Well, now I'm fascinated because you did not mention this part to me, that you may have worked on it. What
yeah, well, doing ADR, I've done, and I've mentioned this before, and I'll say it many more times. I worked on over 1,000 movies, so many that sometimes
you forget which ones.
I do forget until I hear, because my ears are very attuned. When you see the background, in movies, and especially the hidden, there was a tremendous amount of ADR work, which is sound effects work, with actors, you know, filling in the voices and making like the police station full of cops talking back and forth to each other, or the cops of the street shouting to each other during the chase scene, or radio stuff that you hear. All that stuff's recorded in post-production by a small group of actors that fill in all those voices. And I remember in the very beginning of the film, as I was just rewatching it again, the bank heist scene, as people on the street are spilling out and making comments and trying to manage the chaos, I heard 3 distinct voices that are friends of mine. So I either worked on it with them, or they worked on it separately before I got involved with working with them, and I just recognized them. So I went, God, I don't know. And I was looking at the end credits because sometimes I worked for a lady named Barbara Harris. She's a huge ADR casting director. That's how I got into it to begin with. And then after a few years of that, some of the guys and I split off and formed our own group called the LA Mad Dogs. So that's usually how we get credit on our projects, is by our group name, if you want to call it that. And I checked the end credits for this in the post-production sound area, and I knew the people who had recorded it. I knew all their names, but I didn't see either one of our names. So they didn't give anyone credit for doing it, so I couldn't tell who did or who didn't. So It's quite possible I actually worked on it, but I'm not going to say it definitively because I can't. I didn't hear myself in it, which I know sounds so weird, but now I'm gonna have to go back and listen. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, for people out there, you know, when you're watching movies, it's hard to imagine. And now here we're digressing and talking about filmmaking, but no, that's fine. This is the kind of stuff I love anyway when it comes to making any movie. But all those background voices you hear, they never record that stuff on set. The only stuff they record are the principal actors and their main dialogue. Because any other ancillary audio then messes up their dialogue tracks, and you can't cut them cleanly. So extras are literally directed to pantomime what they're doing. They'll open their mouths and pretend like they're saying something, even if they're shouting, but they're not actually doing that. It's a whole other group of actors that comes in and then creates all of those audio vocal sound effects for every single movie that's made. And in most TV shows as well. So it's a little hidden. Here's staying on theme, a hidden secret about filmmaking.
That's fantastic. That's really fantastic. I got to go listen now. I'm very impressed. I'm blown away now. But let's talk about the hidden now. So for those who don't know, okay, so 1987. Okay, it's Kyle MacLachlan and Michael Nouri, and Kyle MacLachlan plays an FBI agent, and he's not what he seems. I mean, we could go ahead and say, here's the spoiler alert in case you haven't seen it. So
well, the whole thing's a spoiler alert.
Right, exactly. So he's an alien hunting other aliens on Earth. They're hiding within bodies. And I've seen several movies similar to this. I'm not sure if this was the first or not, but I have seen several movies with this type of theme. But this was interesting, and I did enjoy the movie. I wasn't sure I was going to, but I did enjoy the movie. Kyle MacLachlan, it seems, was a decade of playing FBI agents.
Oh gosh, yeah.
He had. I read that he had something else before this, and then he had Twin Peaks right after this also. So he had all those. So, I also read, here's one of the things that I was fascinated by too, that Michael Nouri turned down the role of Martin Riggs in Lethal Weapon for this movie.
Oh,
he had to be
okay. Wow, you found out more than I did. That's crazy.
He had to be killing himself afterwards, though.
Oh,
not to hold anything against The Hidden, but you know that he turned down this major one to work on this.
I had no idea. Okay, that's tragically funny in a way. And this just happens to actors all the time. You got to pick one. You got to decide what you want to do. You got to decide sometimes which film it's going to be. As a matter of fact, I remember, I think my favorite story about turning movies down was told by James Caan. And he ran down a list, I don't know what they are, of all the movies, huge movies that he ended up turning down because he thought they were stupid. And he said if I picked a movie, it was more than likely going to fail. He said, so every time I turned one down, I knew I reached a certain point where I knew it was just going to be a huge movie. And so that's the kind of schmuck I am. So it does happen. It does happen a lot where you got to make a decision for one thing or the other, and that's and he's such a good actor. He's really good in this too, because I mean, going towards the plot, Kyle MacLachlan plays a FBI agent on the hunt for aliens, and this alien moves from body to body,
right?
And the villain, the villainous character, which is this alien moving from body to body, are all these people who are randomly going from being normal humans to suddenly going on murderous rampages, stealing fast cars and listening to like acid rock music. And so these random murders are happening throughout the course of a few days that Michael Nouri, as a police inspector, investigator, has to go and then figure out what's happening. And Kyle MacLachlan is trying to move him on from crime to crime to crime to follow this alien when it's taken on different human personas. So the whole mystery of it is about like, okay, what the heck is going on? And I've always felt like with a story like this, as outlandish as it is, because of course it is that one character, the Michael Nouri character, who has to question everything, has to try to make sense of it, and has to move through it before we're actually given, the big secret's given up and the big reveal happens where we go, oh, okay, now I know what's going on, and then you can follow along with it. So I thought it was phenomenal in this film. Carrying the weight of the mystery.
No, I like I said, I had never seen it, so this was all new to me. I enjoyed the film. It was definitely everything that you said. It was fun. It had the cheesy, the special effects, the little yellow ray, but that was cheesy, but it was fun. It was like it definitely was it definitely felt like you said it, a 50s sci-fi movie, to me. This was after the thing, so we had seen other things about the suspicion of humans. We don't know which humans are infected, let's say, by an alien. So we'd seen it in the thing, and I think this also reminded me of I can't remember the name, the Denzel Washington movie where like the evil entity goes from body to body and they don't know who it is.
I am not sure. I don't know that I'm familiar with that movie.
No, I'm gonna have to look that up. So
this should have been part of your research, dude.
It should have. I know. Let's see. This is bad on me.
Yeah, while you're looking that up, I mean, even down to the music in this film, there was something about the score, the soundtrack that that sounded particularly strange to me, and I don't know if they mixed it the way they did. It had a very echoey, hollow feel to it. Like it kind of reminded me of a Jerry Anderson movie from the 60s, or like the Thunderbirds. For some reason, those British shows that had their very dramatic science fiction style scores had this echoey, reverberating, hollow sound to them that was extremely unique. And this film had that. And again, like even in my research, you can never really tell, because people obviously want to try to make the best. Oh goodness!
Sure.
See, here's my club soda coming back to haunt me again. You're always trying to make the best movie you can, the most exciting, the most interesting, the most dramatic, and best made. And they end up, by the time everyone has their hands on it, taking on a certain life of their own. And so I couldn't really find out whether or not the overall design was to kind of follow that. I can't even really call it a convention, but put it in that B sci-fi movie box, or if it just landed there as a kind of a beautiful coincidence. Because I think that's the thing that draws me to it, is that characteristic about it specifically. But did you find your
Fallen?
title?
Fallen is the name of the movie.
Oh, Fallen. Yes, I have seen that. It's
Right.
been a long time. That was a good movie.
That was a good movie. And
I liked it. I liked it a lot. I love the idea, because it's kind of
this reminded me of that a little bit. And even though this came out
Yeah.
first, obviously The Hidden, that you just don't know. You look around you, and it could be anyone.
Right.
And that's like a staple of sci-fi films in general. It's like always, that who can you trust, and the conspiracies, kind of
Well,
that.
yeah, in which helps, which helps filmmakers get films done that are interesting like this without big budgets, because sci-fi is either in space, or
Right.
even or it's all inside your mind or something like that. So that makes, I think that makes it easier to get these kind of stories done. And I just think it's clever. Creeps me out.
No, it was. And this I read too. I don't know if you read this one too, that there was a sequel. Did you read that one?
No.
There was a direct-to-video sequel. None of the original cast. None of them. They had someone else playing. Right, of course. And it didn't do anything. But I read that this was a modest hit, but they had someone else playing the Michael Nouri character. Because this is what I did not like. And I am such a sap with movies. I really am. That I did not like the ending. And so at the end, and again, spoiler, but everyone who's watching this has probably seen the movie. So at the end, Michael Nouri's character is about to die. Okay, so he's about to die, and the alien who's inhabiting Kyle MacLachlan's, earlier he was invited to Michael Nouri's house for dinner, and he saw the interaction between Michael Nouri and his daughter. And so he felt bad that the daughter was now going to be without a father. So the alien force left Kyle MacLachlan, goes into Michael Nouri. And so that upset me. Not that he went into it, just that someone's dying at the end. It's not going to be the same. And this girl is not really having her father. She is having her father, but it's not really her father. So I did not get the big happy ending that I wanted. And like I told you, I am such a sap with these type of movies.
That's so funny, because I interpreted it differently. I maybe and maybe you're saying that he, and part of Kyle MacLachlan's character was the tragedy of him chasing this alien, because this other alien is who historically, from his character's backstory, murdered his partner and his wife and his daughter in his alien life. And so part of this hunt is not only stop him from continuing to kill more, but to exact some sense of revenge for his family. So he's alone, and yes, he sees the power of Michael Nouri's family and how important that is. And you know, I really, I thought that they were lovely scenes at the house. Where
Yes, I agree with that.
he was watching the daughter, and it was an interesting moment in the movie where the daughter looks at him and knows, man, there's something not right with this guy. She doesn't say a word. She just stares at him, but she won't interact with him. And she knows something's up. But I thought at the end, instead of the alien moving from Colin MacLachlan into Michael Nouri's body, because it wasn't the same thing. The monster we saw physically
like
move from
slug
human
like
to human
creature, right?
Yeah, the slug-like thing that came out the mouth and then went to the mouth of the other person and then possessed their body and started to articulate it. He was passing what seemed to me was just like a life force, like an energy force. He was releasing his own and bequeathing that to Michael Nouri, which brought him back to life. So I felt like it was still Michael Nouri. And I did ask myself that question, because I said, wait a minute, have I liked this movie too much and this ending is weird now that he's going to go on as an alien or not? So it was ambiguous enough for me that that's how I interpreted it.
See, it was ambiguous enough for me until I read the description of the sequel. So I could have gone either way. And
well, there you had to go and ruin it for yourself.
Well, I did ruin it for myself. Yes, I could have gone either way, but I did think, even while watching it, I said it could be just the life force, but I was still pretty sure it was the alien. Yeah. That, you know, just giving himself over, that he's going to inhabit the body now. But in the sequel, it says that, you know, this is years after. Again, it happens. Aliens are coming to visit. The daughter is now a detective also. You know, she's also hunting for them. And she's kind of estranged from her father because he hasn't been the same. He's been having all these weird things. So it's leading me to believe that it is the alien inhabiting the body, and that, you know, he's still trying to learn human traits. He doesn't know human affections. Is not fatherly to his daughter. So yes, I ruined it for myself by reading the description of the sequel.
Yeah, and now you ruined it for me. So that's the big spoiler for me. Wow. Well, no, I'm just going to pretend like that doesn't exist.
No, you could edit this out later. That's the only. I was enjoying this movie until that part, and that kind of left me deflated. It was I still thought it was a fun movie. And, you know, I'm glad you selected it, because I like seeing things that I've never seen before, but that still did leave me a little bit deflated at the end.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely not a perfect film by any stretch.
They said it was a modest hit, so it was like. Yeah.
But I think it picked up in the DVD release and developed a bit of a cult following. And who knows, maybe we'll give it a little bit of a boost here now. But yeah, it and going back to the whole 80s thing, it's funny how we tend to forget that these movies are time capsules. You know, what I enjoy about seeing films from the 70s and the 80s, they're old enough now that all the cars are classics. You know, practically every car you see on the street, they were brand new at the time. Now, if we run into them, they're either restored or need to be restored. So I always think that's a lot of fun. And just even seeing Los Angeles, because that's where it takes place.
That's fun. I like seeing that. I agree with you very much.
Yeah, and you know, yeah. So you know, and of course the clothing, the costumes, and not the costumes, the clothing, and all of that. I that tends to be a kick in the pants for me, and yeah, I enjoy that part of it. But also, no, go ahead. The filmmaking style is I completely agree with you. Is very much 80s. The pacing, even the length of the film, because it just seems like movies are getting longer and longer and longer and longer all the time.
Well, it's funny you said that, and I'm going to sidetrack with, like we always do on these things there. Yeah. That you said you like seeing the street, that this reminded you of the streets in LA, you know, the time that you're familiar with. And there are two movies that always come to mind, that because of the same thing for me. and we're totally digressing here, so I apologize. But at the end of Tootsie and at the end of Romancing the Stone, both those movies, they stop, like they kind of, and they go down the New York street at the end of the movies. So that always, I stop and I watch every single moment of those credits because it reminds me of my youth in New York. And so it's the same, and it does get to me each time. It, like, I feel it in my chest. I feel it, watching like that longing for that time that you were a kid, or like the memories of your youth in that moment, in that atmosphere, that setting. So I totally get what you're saying about, seeing the streets of LA, because I get the same thing with those movies in New York.
Yeah. No, yeah, that was definitely my heyday there for quite a while. And it's been, good grief, it's been 20 years for me since I lived there, and I visited a few times. It's changed. Every place changes.
Right.
That's the nature of the beast. But yeah, I don't miss LA at all for a great many reasons. It's a difficult city to live in, and in a lot of ways, depending upon the kind of business you're in. But boy, there is that nostalgic pull to place that I get from Los Angeles. I mean, I even have dreams about it sometimes, where I'm trying to go back to my old neighborhood, or I'm trying to find some place that I knew, and I see in my dream, I see these familiar things, and all of a sudden it's unfamiliar, and it's like it's all changed. And that was very much a real experience I had. My last trip was just a couple of weeks ago, and driving down the same places I used to drive, going to work and going to different studios and all of this, and seeing some of the same places and businesses and buildings, and all of a sudden all these new places and buildings and businesses. It was just, it's like it takes over a little bit. So yeah, getting to go back in the context of a movie and have that nostalgic experience is something I hadn't quite started to put together until I started revisiting some of these movies that you and I are watching for the sake of the show, if not for fun. So
right.
Fascinating.
No, and actually, I mean, yeah, no, I totally get that. I actually went through, you've mentioned the music before too. After it was done, I went down to Spotify and I downloaded a couple of the songs from this movie because I like them so much.
Oh man, awesome! That's great.
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to look up who, and I can't remember his name. I'm looking it up. I am so unprepared, and this is not good. So let's see. Here we go. Edo Ross was in this also.
Oh, yes.
He's like he was a detective in this one, but he's like been in so many things where he's the bad guy. So that was fun seeing him on the other end of this.
Oh yeah, and of course I've seen him in a lot of things too. I'm most the film I know him the most from is Full Metal Jacket.
Right.
That's where I'm the most familiar with him, where he actually isn't playing a bad guy, but he's such a great character actor. And I thought the film was riddled with great character actors. A lot of fairly known people, especially for the 80s, but they all had such they're distinctly different personalities, but once they got possessed by the alien, they all turned into this same kind of weird, awkward, robotic thing. I mean, I gotta say, as a character, and the alien, the characteristics, I guess they're the characteristics of this alien, I just think are hilarious, because there's actually a good deal of humor inserted into this film.
Yes.
And I think the most humorous thing is what this alien likes to do. I mean, he steals Ferraris. He shoots people indiscriminately, or he or she, yeah, it's a he, they identified as a he, and likes to listen to loud rock and roll music while he does it. And it's just, and then he had a huge ego because he decided he wanted to be president of the United States at the end. I mean, it's just like, my God, this guy's ego is this alien's ego is completely unchecked. He needs to be stopped.
To be fair, we've had many presidents in the same way.
Well, yeah, no, there's no, look, I have always said that. I said, if you have got to have a monstrous ego to be a movie star and president of the United States. Yes, there's other things too, but between the two of them, if that's not in your if that's not in your repertoire, you're not going to go places.
and this is when Claudia Christian was in it. She was in Babylon 5 afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And here was another thing I read too. See, I did do some research, so let's see. She got hurt during the when she fired a shot in one of the scenes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was like a little bit of a, even though it's still blanks or whatever, there was still like some, something like hit her face or something afterwards. And so they said, like, later on, every time she did something in Babylon 5 and she pulled the trigger for something, even though it was like special effects added later, for the ray guns or whatever it is.
Yeah.
She would like turn her head because she had the impact of it. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I read. So,
well, I can plus this podcast with a interesting true story on a Disney project I did. Yeah, people don't understand the idea of blanks in a gun on set. They're real guns. You have to use a real gun to fire off a blank.
Right.
And all a blank means is it's an actual bullet. It just doesn't have a lead, the
Casing.
lead bullet inside.
Right.
It's got a thick piece of wool, cotton, dense. They call it wadding, that has to be stuffed in there so the bullet can actually fire, especially with semi-automatic handguns. In order to chamber a new round every time you fire off something, there has to be enough gunpowder, a large enough load in the gun to actually mechanically make that work. But I was working on it's a Western called Fremont and the Mountain Man. Yeah, the title changed. It was one of the projects I did for the Wonderful World of Disney, and it was a total blast. I got to work up in the mountains over the summer and ride horses and be chased by bad guys with guns. And of course, guns were everywhere. Guns were being fired all the time. And there was one shot that the director wanted to have where the bad guy raises his rifle and aims it just off camera from where the camera was. And the camera was a good 15, 20 feet away. So it was not close. But the camera operator said he wouldn't do the shot that way unless he had I forgot what he called it, but it was a shield. No. And the director was really upset because he didn't want to take the time to have the shield mounted to the camera. And he said, no, I will not do this. I will not do this. I've seen this happen before. People can get hurt, even though, you think you're firing a blank, you're not. Something comes out of that gun. So he insisted on it. He refused to work. So we stopped production and waited while the grips went and got this big sheet of plexiglass. It was cut in the silhouette, the shape of the Panavision camera, and it had little clamps on it that attached to it, and it was completely clear but stuck out far enough that it provided cover for the camera operator and the assistant cameraman who had to sit there and pull focus. So in order to give the actor something to aim for, to make it look like he was like shooting as close to camera as possible, they put a piece of tape, crosshairs, on the plexiglass, which just happened to be at the same level as the camera operator's head. So we're all watching. We do the shot. He pulls the rifle up, he aims it and fires. And I was standing to this perpendicular to the whole thing. I wasn't behind camera at all, watching them do this. It shattered the plexiglass. I mean, shattered it. Whatever. And they had a full load in the rifle, so it had a good fire burst that came out of it that you could see. This wad came out, hit that piece of plexiglass, and shattered it.
Wow!
And
wow!
The camera operator, when they finally cut, that was the only take they did. Thank goodness. He was so shaken because he said, "What if I had not insisted on this thing? I'd be dead. I probably would be seriously injured, if not potentially dead right now." So these guns there's no fooling around with them. And the prop department the property master and the prop assistants have an entire hierarchy and a process they go through when there are weapons on set. And as a matter of fact, you have to have a special permit. Not every prop master can rent guns or own guns that they then provide to a shoot, but to a production. You have to have a special permit to do this. And every time they come over, when I was doing Race to Witch Mountain, I was playing a sheriff and I had a holstered 357 Magnum on me all the time. And every time the prop master came over, he said, "I'm giving you your gun now." And he would open the barrel, he'd spin it, he'd say, "Look down the barrel." He'd make me look down the barrel to make sure it was empty. He'd close it and he'd turn it down and he'd click it. And he'd say, and then he'd hand it to me. Wow. And I holstered it myself. So that's how careful they are. And as careful as they are, accidents still happen. So, sure, you know, it's not surprising that, you know, in all of these shoot 'em up things, somebody doesn't, you know, get an eye put out every once in a while.
Look, I mean, we had Mino on, and that we saw the worst things that happened when, you know, talking about accidents like that. But getting back to, you know, first of all, I just want to say quickly, I thought the cameo you did in Race to Witch Mountain was probably one of the most fun cameos of anything that I've seen in films. And this is before it really was to me. Because I was looking, this is before I knew you. And I remember when I watched that movie, and I was hoping that, you know, you and Kim would be on it. And when you did, I was like, yes. You know, like, I always look when they do remakes to see if they have the original people on. And I thought yours was so much fun. You know, the scene that
I'm so glad to hear it. It was so much fun for me because I kind of cracked me up. I thought, I'm finally playing a grown-up. A real grown-up. But
you were also like kind of a badass. I mean, that was like,
that's just it. It was totally fun for me. And I'm sitting here thinking, you know, as the character, you know, no, look, things get out of hand. I can handle it. You know, I didn't have a harmonica, but I figured I could probably figure it out one way or the other.
Well, getting back to I have to ask now, you said we talked about the blanks. So what are the squibs? The squibs, like, you know, they see when people get shot and those go off in the body. What are those then?
That's actually a little plastic pack that's underneath the costume or the clothing that's being worn. That's actually wired to a battery for the sake of simplicity, and they will flip a switch, or, you know, if a bunch of squibs go off, they'll run a like a metal bar across all these little contacts, and they all fire off and explode, blowing fake blood out away from your chest. So they're often painful.
Are they? That's what I was wondering.
Sometimes they'll have some, you know, some kind of clothing, a barrier in between your skin, and because it's a little tiny explosive. Right, bottom line, yeah.
But it's safe, but it can be painful.
Yeah, it can. Well, I have another direct experience with that too. It wasn't a blood squib, but in Return from Witch Mountain, and in my only nude scene I've ever done, where I'm naked from the waist up in the laboratory and in my coma state. I have all these electrodes on my body, on my chest, as my character is Tony is coming out of it, and he's struggling in his head and you know, against whatever is going on. My Tony's telekinesis actually makes these things spark and fire and smoke, and I had them stuck to my chest. And so the special effects guys who I had worked with on Escape to Witch Mountain, so it was the same group, came over before we were shooting the scene and said, you know, here's what we're doing, is this okay with you, because we're going to be putting it on your skin. And Peggy Cobb, my set teacher, who is not only our set teacher, but they're also our welfare workers, right, that look out for our welfare. I said, I don't know. I've never done anything like this. You know, is it going to hurt? Is it hot? Or is it whatever? And he said, no, it shouldn't do anything at all, because it should just smoke this direction, you know, out. It's got a backing on it. And so my teacher said, Peggy said, you know what? I'll try it. We'll put it on my forearm because this is like the most sensitive skin you practically have on your body right here. How she knew that, I don't know, but she knew everything. So he put one on, hooked it up to the 9-volt battery, and it smoked, and that was it. And she said, no, didn't feel a thing. So I went, okay, fine, stick them on me. Well, it was okay after the first take. But after 3, when they stuck them back in the same places, it was like starting to sizzle me. Wow. And you can actually see it on my chest when they pull them off. I've got these red rings.
Wow.
Where they stuck it to me. So, it's like, no, it wasn't a blood squib. I wasn't shot, but I was fried a little bit. And it's the thing is, you always end up just taking it for the team anyway, because you want to get it done, and you don't want to wimp out on the.
You don't want to be the one that's causing the.
Yeah, it's like, I don't want it, not again. So yeah, the whole process is very sophisticated, and those kinds of special effects are, they've changed a lot over the years.
Sure. But
God, they're so effective. I mean, it's amazing how real you think how real it looks. I don't know.
Well, like I said, we'll give it. I mean, this was a fun movie. I did enjoy it. I'm glad you suggested it. I cannot wait to give you a schlock movie to for me. Mine's going to be schlockier than this.
Good. Well, have you picked it? Can we review it on the show?
I have not taken it yet. I'm not taking it yet. I'm deciding between a couple, so it'll be a surprise for you. So yeah. It'll probably be for me, but I'm deciding between a couple. But this was fun, and I saw on Rotten Tomatoes it has a very positive rate. Too. Still, it has like in the 70s percentage of positive of this film.
That's awesome. That's good to know. So I'd love to know. I mean, people who give us your comments about this if you've seen it. Sure. Let us know what you think, and then. Like if there's any other like B sci-fi movies from the 70s and 80s you like let us know, because I would.
Oh, absolutely.
Certain neither one of us have seen everything, and we're always looking for something fun to watch.
Absolutely, yes. Please leave it in the comments. And this has been fun. This was a fun one. Our first Forgotten Films segment. And, can't wait to do some more. But again. We thank you. Thank you very much for watching. And again, to all everyone who's been subscribing, really a heartfelt thank you. And Ike, thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's a blast. Yeah.
Anyway, again, yes, we thank everyone for watching. This has been a lot of fun, this Forgotten Film segment. We hope to do more of these. And again, to all the subscribers, really heartfelt thank you. We appreciate you watching us every week. And we see your comments. I've been reading every single comment that you leave and a lot of the suggestions that you've been making, and they're not ignored, believe me. But again, this has been Jonathan Rosen along with Ike Eisenmann, and this has been Pop Culture Retro. And please hit the subscribe button. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast.